Good morning and welcome to the Coaches Show, brought to you by Benton County Enterprise TV. We are in Week 8 talking about the 6th ranked and 6-1 Lincoln Cardinals at home this week against Cass Midway 1-6. Coach, thanks for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
Let's first talk about Week 7. Lincoln on the road against rival and fellow state-ranked opponent Colcamp. Lincoln took care of business as the win streak has now grown to 5 games. The final from that contest was 38-34 and featured 7 lead changes. A very dramatic game. Coach, let's just open it up on Colcamp and kind of get your thoughts on what your team did well last week, what they struggled with.
The takeaways for me from that game was just the way that our kids competed. We're starting to come together, and that's a big deal. That's one of those things when you begin to be able to focus on the next play and stay in the present and stay in the moment and continue to lean on each other and make plays. That's a huge deal. And watch our kids celebrate after that. You don't have a bunch of individuals out there. You got a bunch of kids that are playing together and playing for each other, and I think that was huge. Offensively, we did some good things. Ross had a big night. Connor made some big plays in the second half, and we got a couple timely and big catches out of Kyle and Darren and Monday even. And our offensive line, I thought, did a good job on Friday night. So with a lot of positives to take away from the game, we had some kids step up and probably played better games than what they have all year long. I thought our defensive line did a nice job. I thought Jacob Plum probably had one of his better games. Obviously, the kids we talk about every week still had good games. Ross had a tremendous game. I think he had 15 tackles, and Kyle was right there with 10 or 11 tackles, and Connor and Mac and all those kids stepped up and did some really good things for us on Friday night. And when you play a game like that, you have to have people step up.
Yeah. So what from the game did you see that your team could improve on? One thing we talk about, seems like we talk about, you and I all the time, is tackling and how important it is and how hard it is to simulate that at practice because of just your size and the number of bodies you have. But what was it?
That was one of the things that we talked about. And the thing that I tell the kids all the time, anytime we play a game, whether we win or lose, it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is. And we had a big win. Everybody's feeling good about it. And I told them when we get into film, we're going to be critical of some things, and that's what we did. We kind of missed tackles, and I think in the first 22 plays of the game, we had 18 missed tackles or something. Wow. So we were getting to the right places. We just weren't finishing and doing our job. And it wasn't like we weren't putting shots on the runners. We just weren't wrapping up and tackling. So. Right. We obviously made that an emphasis this week in practice, and we'll continue to. One of the other things we looked at all the time is how we get off the football. Are we getting off fast? And so from the offensive line standpoint, I thought they have improved, but we went back and really worked on getting off the football and trying to stay on and finish blocks. So those were 2 big things. And then we talk about eye discipline all the time. We gave up a couple of big plays against Colcamp in the pass game, and it just came down to eye discipline and not staying focused on doing your job. All of a sudden something breaks and you want to go do somebody else's job. And the way I relate that, defense has a fit. Everybody has a place that they fit into it, and if everybody goes to the right spot, you gap it out, and there's nowhere to run the ball. But if somebody makes a mistake and you put 2 guys in a gap, now there's a hole. The same thing happens in the defensive secondary. If I'm supposed to be covering a guy and all of a sudden my eyes go to the quarterback and I think I got to go help at quarterback, well, now who's covering your guy?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we ran into on Friday night.
And it's hard to overcome, especially when the guy that is being lost is the fastest guy on the field and so explosive. Harrison is who we're talking about there. He had a couple of very timely hookups with Shear from a Colcamp perspective.
Correct.
One of those coming there at the tail end of the second quarter. You guys it seemed like you were really in control. Colcamp opens up the game on the second play and fumbles on their mesh point, on their midline read. You guys take, I think, 4 plays and a halfback pass from Eckhoff to Mundy scores. Each team kind of goes back and forth there, but then what I'm talking about at the end of the second quarter, kind of a coverage breakdown, Harrison gets behind the corner, and now it looked like you guys were going to go into halftime as commanding of a 4-point lead as you could possibly have. Instead, down 4, I believe. And so, what was the mindset at halftime?
Well, the thing was, everybody knew there was a mistake, and the idea when you go into half is, yes, you want to identify it and you want to say, hey, we got to be better at that. That's part of our job as coaches. We need to be able to be critical. We need to be able to coach in that moment. But the thing about it is, to refocus everybody also. You know, we can't control that. That's done,
Right.
that's gone, and that's what we try to get them to understand. That one's gone. We can't control that one. What we have control over is the first 4 minutes of the second half, and we want to come out and reestablish ourselves, put points on the board, and try to get a stop. I mean, that was our mindset at halftime, and the kids, to their credit, were resilient. They stepped right back up and came right back out and did it. We put together a nice drive to start the second half, went right down the field and scored, get the 2-point conversion. You know, we take the lead again, and then Cole Camp gave us a different look than what we had seen. You know, everything had been counter, it had been midline and veer and power, and then all of a sudden we start to get, it's still counter,
Right.
but we started to get some back action that was different. They started crossing guys, and the quarterback turned his back to the line of scrimmage and gave us the old spinner back look, and it took us a while to adjust. Our kids were, at that point, you're trying to compete, you're trying to do your job and do it really well, and it's that old adage of quicksand, the harder you try, the harder it gets. And so, you know, we were finally able to back up and take control of it again, and our kids settled into their keys, but it took us a while.
Right.
You know, they were good at what they were doing, and we went down 10, and then to come back and be able to put 2 scores on the board in the fourth quarter and close out the game was huge. And like I said, it speaks a lot to the courage of our kids.
Well, I think you know, when, to your point, you talk about you talked about last week and in weeks past about living in the moment and one play at a time. Don't look backwards. Don't look forward. You know, some teams maybe with lesser leadership or just less courage might have went into half and gotten down on themselves and then come out in the third quarter and faltered. That is not what you guys did. That drive that you guys opened up the third quarter with, I have here, it took less than 2 minutes. And then you punch it in from about a yard out. You get the 2-point conversion. Cole Camp converts a 3rd and 24 on that. Well, they don't.
26.
Yeah, and I don't think he converted it. Shear evaded a couple rushers and then hit Ives, which set up a 4th and 3 or
4th and
something.
2 or 4, yeah.
Which they did a good job converting there, and then that ended up a few plays later. Shear scores from 10 yards out. He had a heck of a game. But then that was the 5th lead change already of the game, and you had almost 20 minutes left to play. You guys punt, and then Cole Camp's ensuing drive, you get them into a 4th and 17. First play of the fourth quarter, I think you were talking about this a little bit earlier about a coverage lapse. They motion Harrison. He runs a wheel kind of out of the backfield, and they score from about 25 yards out on 4th and 17. So now, after a 2-point conversion by them, you are down 10. You've got about 11 and a half to play, and you guys just didn't back down at all. You marched right down the field. I have here that they scored on the first play of the fourth quarter, and by 9:22, you were kicking the ball back off to them down 2. So just, you know, what can you say about how your offense executed when it was down? You know, it was time.
You know, it was time, and it's one of those things where physically they kind of imposed their will a little bit in that third quarter, and you know, our kids didn't stop fighting. You know, you reach that point. It could have teetered and gone either direction. And when you have seniors out there, it's different than having. You know, I tell everybody all the time. There's a lot of difference between a 15-year-old boy and a 17-year-old young man.
Yeah.
And our young men stepped up and played. They competed, and they continued to play, and they focused on the moment. They knew that we couldn't score, you know, 10 points at once. We had to take care of things one step at a time, and they went out and got after it. Ross had a big run in there. I think Connor sealed it with a big run in that drive. I think there was a nice completion to Kyle during that time too. And you know, all those things added up to us being able to continue to move the ball down the field and put pressure back on them. That was the goal. You know, we wanted to be able to put pressure, and I think we went through the third quarter and didn't get a stop, and then you know, we scored and we were able to get a stop and give ourselves another chance to go and score again.
Well, and then on the ensuing drive, you alluded to the stop that you guys made, and when they went to that spinner offense, you guys, it was clear that you guys hadn't seen that, and I'm not sure that Cole Camp's run that all year. They've obviously practiced it because they did it well. They did execute it well, but to the credit of your defense, now down 2. The game clock is waning. I think it was under 6 minutes, and Cole Camp's in Lincoln territory. It's a 4th and 6, and you get really good edge rush out of both Everhart and Hesse. Everhart comes around the defense's left side and forces Shear to step up. Mack hits him as he throws, and it just comes out weird, and it's incomplete. And now you guys have the ball, and again, wasting no time. I mean, your offense was just so efficient. And then Connor leads another touchdown drive in which he scores from about 25 yards out, I think, on a read. And we talked about earlier this week about how leading up to last week, you had talked about Colcamp covering your Twins looks with the corner and then having the safety shaded over the top, but he's pretty deep. You hit a quick slant earlier on that fourth quarter game-winning drive that pulls the safety over. Connor makes a great read a play or two later and scores from about 25 yards out. And then for the first time all night, you guys fail on a two-point conversion. Very efficient from the two-point perspective. And now, with about 4.5 minutes to play, you give the ball back to Shear. To your point, the only stop of the second half you had made was on the prior drive, and then your defense steps up yet again. What's going through your guys' head as a team and as a staff as Colcamp is marching down the field? I mean, they were marching to some degree, being as you had probably your best kick of the night right before that, because I think they started their drive from their own 30.
No.
And they were into your territory when their drive finally started.
And I think if I get that right, didn't they have a fourth down completion to get across to cross midfield in there?
I believe, yes, I believe they did.
Hit the running back out, I think, in the flat, or maybe it was a third down completion. They may have had two to extend that drive to keep it there. You know, we were just looking for, and the thing we kept telling the kids is just stay here. You know, just stay in the moment. We just need you guys to make one play. Just make one play. And you know, eventually we were able to get it. So we got a little bit of pressure on the Shear kid, and he threw a ball that Connor was able to intercept.
Yeah.
And you know, it was, you know, we weren't going to go away easy, and neither were they.
Right.
And so to be able to just live in the moment, I mean, that's the whole deal, is just being able to live in the moment. And it happens at this time of the season too, because when you begin to win, everybody wants to talk about winning streak, and you want to talk about winning records, and you want to do all that stuff, and honestly, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is who comes in front of us next. When they step up and they're ready to go, we have to be able to take care of that in that moment. And that's what we're trying to live by. You know, it's the next play. That's the only thing that we have control over, and that's what we're trying to do. And the other thing that we really preached this week to the kids, and I guess yesterday specifically, is come to practice and do everything that you do with a purpose. Mm-hmm. You know, at this time of year, it can be easy to start to listen to all those distractions, but when we watch the film, if we watch it objectively, what do we need to improve on? And then when you step out to practice, let's work on those things and let's get better. Let's make sure that our focus is there so that we can do what we need to do.
Well, your defense had focus on that last drive because in a game where 70-plus points are scored, there's 7 lead changes, you'd think, we were thinking up in the booth or afraid maybe, that whoever had the ball last was going to win the ball game. And I guess that technically was true, but your defense made a play and got off the field when they needed to. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to touch on some stats from last week, some season totals, and then after that we'll talk about Cass Midway.
Are you missing that human touch with your bank? Come talk to a real person at Community National Bank and Trust. We're your local bank that's small enough to know you, yet big enough to offer the best products. Stop by and see us at 101 South 65 Highway in Lincoln or 1695 Hilltop Drive in Warsaw. Your community, your bank, your relationship. Community National Bank and Trust. Federally insured, locally awesome. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Okay, Coach, so let's talk about some statistics from last week's game against Colcamp. We mentioned the potent running attack that you guys had, 40 carries as a team, 237 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's almost 6 yards a carry. Connor, very efficient, had 9 carries for 83 yards and a couple of scores. Ross carried the ball 31 times for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the passing game, 2 contributors this week. We talked about that halfback pass in the recap. On your first drive, Kyle Eckoff takes the kind of the end around and then rises up and throws the ball to Mundy down the right sideline for 1 completion, 27 yards and a touchdown. Connor Line had 11 completions on 18 attempts for 94 yards. He also threw an interception. Mundy had 3 receptions for 38 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Eckoff had 4 receptions for 31 yards and a couple more 2-point conversions. Very getting involved in the 2-point game almost every week. Matt Kessie had a catch for 3 yards and a 2-pointer. And then Darren Roberts had 3 catches for 43 yards. Maybe his biggest one of the game was on that final drive. I think there was an injury or something in the Colcamp secondary you guys were looking to take advantage of. Connor in trouble, just kind of threw it thinking Darren's down there somewhere. Darren did an excellent. The ball was underthrown. Darren did an excellent job to adjust, which he's done all year, and come back and make that
you know,
play.
that's one of those things that you hear all the time. You know, the back shoulder fade. If you're running a fade, the offensive player has an advantage on an underthrown ball.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the things we talked about: is throw it at his back and give us a chance.
Yeah.
And you know, Braden talks to him about that all the time, and he was able to put his foot in the ground and come back and made a nice play on the ball and then picked up some extra yardage with it.
Definitely did, and that was a huge chunk play on a drive where I think, you know, I don't know how many plays it took, but you guys were just, again, so efficient offensively. I mean, not wasting any time to score on a defense that has been pretty good this year. So to continue on, we'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Riley Sanders, the freshman, he had 10 tackles and a sack. He also had a forced fumble. Kyle Leckoff had 13 tackles and a forced fumble. Connor Line, 9 tackles and a tackle for loss with an interception, the game-winning or sealing interception.
Yep.
Mac Hesse, 10 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery. Camden Everhart had 6 tackles, 2 tackles for losses. Ross had 15 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Jacob Plum, we talked about in the break there about how well he played. He got his name called multiple times on defense with 6 tackles, but also did a great job when you guys made that adjustment to start pulling him around, and he was doing a great job in the blocking game. Christian White, 4 tackles, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble. Eli Tolliver also had 5 tackles. So, Coach, defensively, we talked about the missed tackles and things. We talked about the interception, the play that it took to win the game. Defensively, what stood out to you? I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what can you say? Just one more thing about their effort.
Yeah, the thing about it is just the constant effort. I mean, you go back and Monday runs a guy down. You know, they ended up scoring, but instead of giving up a fast score and you know, big energy or whatever, he's able to make a tackle and run a kid down, tackle him at the 1 yard line. You know, Riley made some big plays. The thing about it is the kids just kept coming and kept competing, and I thought our defensive line, you know, they don't get as much credit as maybe they should at times, because we're asking them, like we said, to cancel gaps and to be physical, and that was a tough chore last week. You know, Cole Camp's really physical at the line of scrimmage, and those kids did that. And then I thought in the fourth quarter, when we needed to step up, you know, we moved Eli to nose, we moved Christian out to tackle. I thought that move was good for us. Our kids got a little bit more physical and were able to stop the down block a little bit, and those kids made a bunch of plays. And I thought all of our kids made huge plays at different times, you know, and Ross probably had one of his better games. You watch it, he's making tackles from sideline to sideline, and had a big effect on the game, and so did Kyle.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on, I want to touch on some season totals. We haven't done this yet this year, but I just want to, you know, you've got some guys that are really racking up some impressive seasons on both sides of the ball, and that's the thing that's so impressive to me about this week's game, and really every game for you guys, is just that you're getting these contributions from the top guy to the last guy on both sides of the ball, and then 90% of those guys are turning around and doing it on the other side.
Yep.
And it's so impressive and really a good job. So leading the team right now, Ross Johnson has 66 tackles. He's also got 6 sacks and 5 tackles for losses. Next up, Camden Everhart, the sophomore. He has come a long way. He was so good last year as a freshman, and continuing on that success, he's got 49 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 8 tackle for losses. Kyle Leckoff also 48 tackles, a half sack, a couple of pass breakups, an interception. Connor Line, who's only played 4 games on defense. He's averaging nine tackles a game with 35 total. He's got 8 tackle for losses. That's impressive, and an interception to boot. Riley Sanders, another freshman. You guys are getting a great contribution out of him on defense. We mentioned the sack that he had last week on a 2-point conversion,
right.
a very nice play. He's got 38 tackles. He's also got 2 interceptions, a sack, and 2 tackle for losses. Mac Hesse, 34 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 5 tackle for losses. And then, you're talking about your defensive line and the job they did this week against a physical offensive line, but and that you're asking them to cancel gaps and take double teams and maybe not get their name called as much. But as I look down, Jacob
impressive
Plum,
year, yeah.
21 tackles. You got Ashton Wolf, 19 tackles. These guys are not playing every snap. I mean, they're rotating in
Right.
and doing a great job. Christian White, he's got 5 tackle for losses. Eli Tolliver has a couple of sacks, a couple tackle for losses, and 20 tackles. And that's just to name a few. So really getting some good contributions out of those guys too. Moving to the offensive side, as far as rushing stats go, your team's got over 1,400 yards as a team. Johnson has 750 of those with 13 touchdowns. Connor Lind also has 425 yards. You pair that with his 1,100 passing yards, and he's got over 1,500 yards as one person with 15 touchdowns. Moving to receiving, you're kind of doing a really good job spreading the ball out. Darren Roberts has 443 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns. Mundy's got over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns as well. Kyle Eckhoff has 240 receiving yards with a touchdown, and Mac Hesse's got 130 with a touchdown. And both of those guys have multiple 2-point conversions to their name. So going, as we get into the last bit of the season and as it winds down, how will your offense evolve? How has it evolved? Who's come along? We see some guys that last year didn't contribute like they're contributing this year.
They're playing with more confidence, and being seniors, and then winning always helps.
Yeah.
But these kids they're confident in the things that they're doing, and I think you're going to continue to see them have success. How much success that is, we don't know. On any given night, the thing about it is if you lean one way too far, I think one of those other kids can step up and make plays for us. And I think we're moving them around enough that it's giving them an opportunity to make those plays. And as we get healthy again, Max fought his elbow a little bit here, and Kyle's fought a quad injury. And as those two guys get healthy, it just adds more to it. Darren and Mundy had a huge game, obviously, against Adrian. And I think you're going to continue to see them make plays in the passing game and possibly even in the run game. And as far as where do we go from here and what do we expect, we just want to be getting to do what we do a little bit better, and then we've got to do some things to break tendencies as the season goes on. You reach a point where we did certain things and there are big tendencies there. We knew that, but we also knew that we were going to have to hang our hat on that, and we were going to have to get that going in order for the rest of it to come along. And now we're at a point where some of what we want to do is begin to break those tendencies just a little bit and get some of these other guys an opportunity to make plays because they can.
Yeah. And then on the defensive side, you guys have done a good job of allowing different guys to make plays, specifically on the defensive front. What can you say about how your team has bought into the idea that, and I'm talking specifically about your big guys, and you rotate a lot of them in. You've got a senior-led group that has brought along a couple of freshmen that you're getting good snaps out of too, and it seems like everybody understands what their job is and comes in and does it with a purpose.
Well, part of this, I think Coach Spinago's doing a good job with those guys, and I think Connor does a great job of just communicating with them and letting them know what they need to get done. And he's working with them to play fast and get off the ball. He's in the headset. As soon as one of them doesn't get off the ball the way he thinks they should, then we're running another one in. And we've gotten good production. You got Isaac Collins done a good job, and Ashton Wolf and Ben Eckhoff. All 3 of those kids have made contributions for us during the year, along with with Eli and Christian and Jacob. And then as Kranz gets healthy, I think he'll probably figure back into that rotation somewhere. A lot of it's just going to depend on his health and how he's moving. Obviously we need that body on offense.
Yeah.
So we can spell him on the defensive side.
Okay, so we've touched on the stats. We're going to take one more commercial break, and then we'll talk about Cass.
Veracruz Trace Mexican Restaurant in Lincoln, Missouri is proud to support Lincoln and Warsaw High School football. The friendly staff at Veracruz serves delicious and authentic Mexican cuisine Sunday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday through Saturday from 11 to 10. Try it for yourself at 455 North Highway 65 or call it in at 660-547-0315.
Okay, welcome back. So, Coach, looking forward to the Cass Midway Vikings here in Week 8. What do we expect to see from Cass's defense?
They will base primarily out of a 3-front. We have seen a bunch of different looks from them, and the one that they've done most consistently, they've been in a 3-5-3 look. We've seen them in a 4-4, we've seen them in a 4-2-5, with a 2-high shell. We've seen them Even against Adrian, they jumped into a 7-1.
Oh, wow.
And they jumped into it one time, and then they were up once, and then they backed out, and just trying to do anything they can to gain an advantage. They're a team that's looking for an identity, and to me, that's what I told the kids. It's what makes them scary. They've got nothing to lose,
right.
So they're going to come in, and we may see anything. And it's just staying calm, staying in the moment, and blocking your rules from the offensive side, and play fast, play aggressive, and let's see if we can't get after them. And one of the things we want to do is push the tempo a little bit. When you push the tempo, you don't give them an opportunity to make substitutions and get in and out of defenses. They've got to get in something to live in it. And that'll be one of our goals, especially early in the game.
And then off the air, we talked about some of their key players. I think you mentioned number 6 and number 4 being
8 and 4. Yeah.
8 and 4 being
Yep.
a couple of their better athletes. Do they show up on the defensive side of the ball as well?
They do. One plays linebacker, one plays defensive back, and they do a good job. They've got some big old linemen. They got some big old kids at the line of scrimmage. 71 and 54 are two that have jumped out a little bit at different times. 71 actually had an opportunity in their punt set last week to pick up 2 first downs out of their punt, fake punt stuff. So they've got some athletes. It's just it's a hard part. I've told you before about we don't seem to get the rosters early enough and things, and so by the time we get our scouting report stuff done, we don't have all that. But I would say that they're probably playing a bunch of young kids and trying to figure things out a little bit. They've had a big quarterback back playing, number 19, who's done a decent job for them at times. Throws a good ball, but he did not play last week, and I don't know whether he was injured or sick or what his story was. So number 8, who'd been playing receiver, who was his favorite target, was standing back there at quarterback last week, and 4 became his favorite target. So, hopefully we can identify where those kids are and like we've talked about before, have eye discipline and read our keys and play fast.
Will they do, a majority of misdirection, or will they line it up and try and smash it?
Their MO has been lining up and trying to smash it. They'll run some zone concept stuff and some zone read when they get into a 2x2 set. When they get in up under center, sometimes you'll see bone, you'll see broken bone, but their favorite formation this year has been the 2x2 with a tight end and a flanker to one side and a slot and split to the other, with a quarterback and running back standing beside each other, and then in the double tight with a wing and I formation. And you're going to get them lined up and just trying to run power football and run right downhill and right at you and control the clock.
So not wildly different from Cole Camp, although they utilize more misdirection. So how important is it, and we'll talk about this again probably when we touch on the other side of the ball, how important is it after an emotional game and such a tightly fought contest between Cole Camp to not have a letdown against an opponent that has a bad record?
Well, that goes back to what we talked about yesterday, is having a purpose. Our purpose is go out and take care of business the way we do it. We're not worried. We can't worry about what they do or don't do. We have to go out and do what we're supposed to do. And if we go out and we play at full speed and we block and tackle and do the things that we're supposed to, we will take care of business. And that's been the message all week long. The other thing is to get out to a fast start. You don't want to allow a team who may be struggling to come in and feel like they're in a ball game. You want to go out and slam that door shut as fast as you can. I thought our kids responded against Slater and did a good job of that. This week, senior night should help some of that. And it should get the kids up, should get them excited. And hopefully we'll get out and get to a fast start.
Absolutely, and at this point in the season, you can't take any game for granted.
No, absolutely not.
And you talk all the time about living in the moment and taking it one opponent at a time, and I think that'll pay dividends this week. Have you had a good week of preparation?
We had a good week. Tuesday wasn't one of our better days, but I felt like yesterday was a good day. I thought this morning when we went to practice that they did a good job, and we're excited to see what happens now.
Awesome. All right, well, you heard it here first, guys. Coach Straley, thanks for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and close this one out. The 6th-ranked Lincoln Cardinals will host the Vikings of Cass Midway in a senior night fashion. Kickoff is set for 7 p.m. If you're not able to attend in person, remember Brett Bryan and I are live on BCE TV at www.citylinktv.com, as we are every week, and we'll be live roughly 10 minutes before kickoff. Again, Coach, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Enjoy the game, guys.
This has been a BCE TV production. Thank you for watching.